Good afternoon. This is Mike Rosenberg from IESE Business School. If you've been following this series, you know I'm a strategy professor at IESE, and we have been broadcasting a series of webinars with different faculty experts on the coronavirus and the situation we're facing these days. We've also had a number of faculty members speaking on different topics during the last few weeks, and really our interest is to get the word out as much as we can to as many people as we can to try to help. This broadcast is being broadcasted live on LinkedIn. It's also on our YouTube channel at iese.edu, and it's also being broadcasted by La Vanguardia. Now, we have had some technical difficulties in the last couple of days. It's raining here in Barcelona, and why the rain has anything to do with the internet, don't ask me. But if we do have technical difficulties in this live session, we will try to reestablish the connection. And if we see that it's really, really getting bad, we will postpone the entire session till Thursday at 4 o'clock, same time, same channel. Today, it's really a pleasure to have with me Nino Vaccaro. He's a professor in the ethics department of IESE Business School. He's part of the ethics think tank we have at IESE, which is sponsored by the CaixaBank Chair of Corporate Social Responsibility. Nino, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's a great pleasure being here. Good afternoon to everyone.
So Nino, as you know, we've been having these webinars, and this issue of social responsibility and really the ethical responsibility of business leaders has come up again and again. In these difficult times, many companies have had to shut their doors. They have tremendous problems with cash flow, and the question is, what do you do? Do you furlough or lay off your employees to make sure you have enough cash to open the business? Do you continue to pay people? You know, this is the kind of issue we've had. So that's why we really wanted to get into the ethical dimensions of this whole thing. And if we talk about stakeholders in general, because I know this is what you study both at IESE and as part of the CaixaBank Chair, you know, what are stakeholder needs and how do you define them, let's say, properly from an ethical perspective?
Well, that's a very interesting and complicated question. Before starting, let me thank all members of my department, which is important. So this session was a collaborative effort of everyone in my department. Mistakes are of mine, good ideas are from my colleagues. So that's extremely important. So addressing your question, well, the stakeholder model is one of the tools that we can use when we wanted to think seriously about corporate social responsibility. It is not the only tool, but it is a relevant tool. So the stakeholder model, the overall idea of the stakeholder model is, let's look around who is affected when I'm making some decisions. And let's try to understand what are the effects, the consequences of what I do. And let's identify inside my organization and outside my organization who is affected and who really cares and how I can improve my decisions to make a better life. So within the idea of the CSR model, so the corporate social responsibility model and the stakeholder model, there is this additional relevant model, which is the perspective of the company as a community of people. So the stakeholder model makes little sense if we don't frame and we don't understand companies as community of people. And I'm not talking about the internal perspective. I'm talking about in a broader sense.
Because any human organization in the end is a group of people, right? I mean,
that's exactly the point. The difference is that, as you know, we got since the 50s of the last century, we got a discussion about shareholder value maximization, and some people forgot that. So since the 50s of the last century, some people were so focused on shareholder profit maximization that we forgot that we were dealing with people. It's not a matter of human capital. The term is inappropriate. We are talking about our guys. We are talking about people, and there is a fundamental principle which is the dignity of the person.
Okay. Okay. And you have kind of as you look at different stakeholders and try to identify their needs, how do you look at that? What's the framework? What's the model?
Okay, that's a very complicated question in the sense that, first of all, generally, a lot of people focus on stakeholders' expectations. So the general idea is, you ask me something, I try to make you happy, which is an irresponsible way to do. Because sometimes people are incapable to identify their real needs. So even in IESE, in our most advanced negotiation courses, we discuss how to look at needs and how to interact continuously with critical individuals, organizations, groups, stakeholders to try to distinguish between what they expect and then maybe to distinguish if there is a need which is different. I do it with my collaborators. I do it with my clients. I do it with my students. Juniors, we don't have such students, but if you teach to undergrades, undergrads want to pass the exam. This is not their need. This is their expectation.
So maybe I think you showed me earlier a chart which kind of explains the difference between expectations and needs. Do you have that?
No, this chart
I was showing
you, it's essentially a broader frame, which is important for us to understand what corporate social responsibility is. Essentially, it's a summary of what we said with a different perspective. So the idea of corporate social responsibility is focused on the fact that companies are organizations that should go beyond creating shareholders value, maximizing shareholders value. And they are constitutionally, let me highlight, they are constitutionally allowed to exist in the society because they are supposed to serve the society. So
this is what some people call the license to operate, yeah, the social license to operate.
Exactly. This is a wonderful article of 1932 in the Harvard Law Review. So the idea is, it's important because after the Second World War, people were so focused on making money that they forgot the very meaning of organizations. Oh, sorry, firms. Okay. So it's extremely important. So if we want to frame, in particular in this COVID crisis, what corporate social responsibility means, we have to remember two things. Companies are supposed to serve social needs, to address social needs. Second, they are community of people. Once you have those two things in mind, you can start thinking seriously about what we can do in the COVID crisis. Otherwise, there is a cognitive distortion. You start having cosmetic corporate social responsibility. I tell my customers that I'm so cool, but in reality, I'm not really interested. I'm doing something for reputational issues, which is another stuff.
And now CSR as a topic has come a long way in the last 20 years, no? You know, and you know, I remember, I don't know, 40 years ago that I think Friedman said that corporate philanthropy was like theft. So we're not talking about corporate philanthropy anymore. We're talking about CSR. And how has it changed over the last 20 years?
Well, the article you are mentioning is an article very, very famous, and it's in our heart, in our brain, because this is an article of 1970 in the New York Times. Friedman was not wrong. The problem was that his arguments were incomplete, in the sense that okay, some companies can focus on shareholders maximization, but the reality is that today the average shareholder is interested in many more things. So essentially what happened in the last 50 years, 1970, when we have this famous article up today, there was a series of reflection of the community, universities, professors, but in particular consumers, NGOs, managers, multinational companies about what companies should do. And it's crystal clear that companies should go well beyond making shareholders rich, and they should work to make an impact, which is well beyond what the law says. So the two typical references that we got in the past, 50, 60 years ago, law and shareholder maximizations are lost. People want more and more and more. By the way, it's extremely important, and at a certain point we will have to link it with the COVID crisis because it's relevant. In the last 50 years, the expectations of the civil society has increased dramatically. My grandmother is a medical doctor. Her expectations in the 50s, when she was buying yogurt, were very, very different from the expectations my cousin has today when she buys yogurt. 20 years ago, 50 years ago, was super simple to build an antenna on the roof of a building. Today, it's almost impossible because people are aware that there are consequences for the health. We are much more conscious about the environmental and sustainability issues. So there is an increase in the expectation of the society, and this is creating, shaping the sense of corporate social responsibility.
Okay, so Nino, if I remember, you've got kind of 4 different topics, 4 different angles to look at this thing, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how this is relevant in this COVID crisis.
Thanks. So essentially what's happening, if we take this idea that companies are supposed to serve social needs and they are a community of people, when we have a dramatic crisis like the one we are experiencing, we have a new urgent social needs at global level. Let me highlight this. It's extremely important to understand that this crisis should be addressed at global level. There are local levels, national levels, but we have to broaden our analysis. And policymakers, all European governments are working in a non-coordinated way. This is a problem. Europe is forgetting the African situation. There is a lack of coordination. Multinational companies have the possibility to look in a more integrated way. So we have an unprecedented and unexpected crisis. We have new needs, new products, masks, ventilators, new services. We need innovation. We need people that find solutions of new problems. We need to support our governments. I'm in Palermo, in Sicily right now, unfortunately for a family situation. I was shocked to see how NGOs, for-profit firms are working with the Protezione Civile, which is the national
the civil authorities, yeah, civil protection
authorities and governmental authorities to help people in need. So they invented, I'm impressed, there are here in Palermo people who were moved with military airplanes with new logistics that they invented in 2-3 days. So we need innovation in terms of services, products, processes. We need to find new innovative ways to help our society, global society.
So Nino, but if we get away from the kind of the global view, and I agree with you that it's a mess, in my own country it's a mess, and even the national view, because most of our people are business leaders, they're managers, they're CEOs. You know, if we get down to the corporation as the unit of analysis, and maybe what are some of the angles that they should be looking at as they deal with this crisis? Well,
there are needs there, internal needs. There are needs at any level for any kind of stakeholders. And essentially, we have a slide that we can help us because there are essentially a couple of perspectives that can be useful.
So please go ahead. Yeah.
Let's see if I find it. One. Okay.
But don't worry, because as you talk, yeah.
Okay. So the first tool is the ethical agenda. The ethical agenda is it's related to this very simple question. What are my ethical priorities as a responsible leader in this situation? So I always play with my MBA saying, try to distinguish the agenda of a responsible leader and what would make you different from any responsible leader. Now, related to this broad question, in our context, which are the resources that I can use, internal resources that I can use to resolve some critical needs that are emerging as a result of the COVID. Do I have capabilities? Do I have contacts? Do I have networks? Do I have material resources? So linking what I have inside as an organization, as a leader, and how this can be used in a creative way. Let me highlight, in a creative way to solve a need. And in this sense, the practitioner literature focus generally on 4. So when you have these questions, you make it to yourself these questions, so you make it to your organizations these questions. You need some pillars for orientation. And the 4 pillars that we use in IESE, but they are used at the international level by practitioners, and are common good, dignity of the person, solidarity, and subsidiarity.
Okay, maybe you can go into a little bit. I mean, the practitioners is normal people running businesses, right?
Exactly.
You distinguish between the practitioners and the professors who are studying what they're doing. Is that right?
Yes, practitioners are managers, policymakers, people working for NGOs.
Well, they're the people who are watching this broadcast, so maybe you can talk. Yeah. Okay, fantastic.
Exactly. Now, let me clarify. The world changed. We need to be creative and innovative. Sometimes we don't link. It's not normal. We will see when we will discuss some cases. Sometimes we don't even make a link between what we can do and the need, because the need is new. We are not familiar.
So Nino, we've got about 5 or 6 minutes before I want to go to the questions. We got lots and lots of questions coming from the LinkedIn feed. By the way, if you have questions, type them into the comments section in LinkedIn or in YouTube, and there's a lady who is magically transforming them to my iPad. But if you can give maybe 5 or 6 minutes on what has changed and how what should managers do differently because of the crisis from an ethical point of view. And really, I think the critical issue is where is the greater good? Where is the right answer when you're caught between keeping the lights on and maybe sending some people home, things like that?
Well, yes. So there are well, first of all, the layoff are always very difficult issues to be discussed, and the amount of variables that should be taken into account are in a high number, and they require a serious and deep thought. For sure, when we are talking about layoff, we have on one side guaranteeing that the ship is surviving, the boat is surviving. On the other hand, if you need to do a layoff, you have to help people the best you can that have to leave the company to have some opportunities, and for sure you have to treat them with dignity, for sure.
So now, you start with employees' well-being. That's what you're starting here, yeah?
Yes. So the point with the let me run behind here. So I identified the 4 concerns. These are just 4 concerns that I believe are most important in a preliminary discussion like ours. The first is employees' well-being, and be careful. I'm not talking only about money. The second is proximity stakeholders, so external stakeholders that are in my proximity, culturally, geographically, etc., etc. The third are concerns related to the society in broader sense. So we need to broaden our scope, and finally we have problems, a temporal perspective.
Well, so maybe we could jump, to the 3rd question and the 4th question, if that's okay. Because I think we all get. Friend. Yeah, I mean, so from a society point of view, if you're running a business, I mean, what do you need to worry about society, or how do you connect that?
Well, the point is that we discover. Let me use a case. Michele Frisoli was our IESE MBA. He completed MBA in 2011. He is now CEO of an aeronautical a company which is producing aeronautical components in south of Italy. And within a few days, he was capable to switch his production. Now he's producing masks. I have other examples. In Spain, Zara and Seat. In Italy, Valentino, Calzedonia, Geox, Prada, Ferrari. So it's crystal clear that if there is a shift in the needs of the society, there are also opportunities.
And what we've heard about also from this series and other events is that from an employee morale point of view and a communication point of view, people get really excited when their company is doing the right thing for society.
Exactly, and indeed we know from research that when you are really committed to corporate social responsibility, but really, employees have a stronger attachment to the organization. They are even willing to do some unpaid extra effort because they believe in what they are doing.
On this question, one of our listeners or watchers asks, is there a red line between, doing the right thing and just taking advantage of an opportunity? Is that?
Well, okay, this is called the cosmetic CSR. You do things because they make you looking good. There is a line. I mean, the critical issue is the intention. Now, let me tell you, if you undertake a cosmetic CSR program, your employees will discover immediately. And the risk that this will be a boomerang against your head is very, very high. Why? Because there is, in the last 10 years, we got so many NGOs and organizations that are controlling CSR programs that I really encourage everyone to not lie or to not start.
It's the equivalent of greenwashing in the sustainability space.
It's exactly greenwashing. Indeed.
So here's another question on this same topic, which is, should a company focus on its employees first, or the suppliers and customers, or on civil society? Where's the priority from an ethical point of view?
It depends the needs. If you have, is it a matter of life and death? What are we talking about? It really depends. I mean, these issues are incredibly complex, even for specialists. During the last 2 weeks, I received, I don't know how many calls from friends of mine who are managing companies and they don't know what to do. And unfortunately, there is no manual. So this is so contextual that there is no generic answer. For sure, ceteris paribus, having the same condition for everyone, is normal that if I am the commander of a platoon, I take care of my guys.
Okay. Now here's another question on the same topic. If you don't mind, I'm just going to jump to some other questions on this topic, and then we'll go to the number 4. If a company's been making money for some years and it's got some retained earnings, should it use that savings or that retained earnings to kind of keep everybody employed for the 3 or 4 months that this thing is going to last? Or should they look at things on a short-term basis?
Mike, you should choose an easier question for me. The answer is it depends. I mean, again,
Nino, they're not my questions. These are coming from our audience, so don't blame me. Huh?
Choose the easiest questions, please. No, I'm joking. The point is that again, it depends from a lot of conditions. It's crystal clear that if a company has some energies that are in stock, and there is viability, so you know that this is a transition, and you forecast that in 1 year you can make it, you need to use those resources, for sure. It's also true that if you had a previous commitment, these resources were committed to other activities, and you had already some commitments with shareholders, etc., you need to discuss these things. So
that's really the bottom line, isn't it? Do you do what the shareholders are hoping you'll do, or do you maybe do something extra or something more for your employees?
My take is that you should convince your shareholders to really take care of your employees.
Okay.
So my take of the story is, and this is extremely important. By the way, here you are opening a line of a super interesting line of discussion, which is we don't need only to educate employees and managers. We need to educate also shareholders.
Yeah, one of our listeners says, that a profitable business must be responsible. It must guarantee social business, and it must guarantee sustainable work. That these things have to be equal, otherwise things are not going to last. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I teach a course called, it's almost 10 years I'm teaching a course called Social Innovation, Social Entrepreneurship. I mean, and what I generally say at the beginning of the course is, this course is because the world is not working well. I mean, all companies should do what we are going to discuss. I mean, the company should be responsible, should be normally committed to environmental sustainability, should take care seriously of the dignity of the person and the common good. So we are managing in our business ethics courses, and let's say in social innovation, social entrepreneurship, your wonderful sustainability course, we are managing a distortion in the society. So in normal conditions, Mike, we should be unemployed.
There's a bunch of questions about your next point, which I think is what happens next. Let me just give you the first question, and then maybe you can go to your next point, which is the Business Roundtable, and in Davos in 2020, they made a declaration about stakeholder capitalism, kind of going beyond the only shareholders model. Do you think that's going to survive the crisis, or do you think the crisis is going to wash that away?
No, I believe
and I know you have some comments on this whole topic about what's going to happen next.
Well, I will arrive there, but the question is so interesting, even though complicated. My take of the story is that this crisis is reinforcing CSR expectations, so social responsibility expectation of the society. So we will look for healthier food, we will look for healthier relationships, we will look for healthier work-family balance relationship. So I believe that this will be an exogenous shock.
What shock? What shock? We have to speak in real language. We can't speak in academic language. What do you mean by?
This will be an unexpected shock. I'm sorry. This will be an unexpected shock that will push at maximum speed this change that I experienced as a professional and as a researcher in the last 20 years. Let me tell you this. 20 years ago, I'm 44. 20 years ago, I entered the first class talking about business ethics and corporate social responsibility, and students were shocked. They thought that I was crazy. Today, students expect from us to discuss these issues, and they are proactive in the discussion. I expect that in 3 years, our participants will expect more and more about these issues. Why? Because it's crystal clear. I mean,
there's a couple of questions about the link between CSR and marketing. One questioner says, "Isn't all this CSR stuff just marketing?" And another one says, maybe we should be doing more and speaking less about how wonderful our companies are. I mean, are people going too far in terms of branding and in terms of getting their story right?
Well, okay, so cosmetic CSR is a serious issue, which is
you call it cosmetic CSR.
Yes, or which is the equivalent of the greenwashing for sustainability. So I do something to appear cool, and I tell more considering what I really do. I believe that these strategies are a disaster for the company in the medium long term. First, because people discover. So humility is it's an individual virtue, but it is also a corporate virtue. But on the other hand, it's important to communicate, in the sense that if you do something cool, you can be what is called an institutional entrepreneur, a person which is showing a possible best practice with social consequences, and be contagious in the positive way with the society.
And in COVID, how do you do that? There's a crisis, people are in danger, people are getting sick, or their parents are getting sick, people are locked down. You might have to shut one part of your business, keep the other one open because it's essential. I mean, how do you actually balance this stuff in real life? I mean, conceptually, I think we get it, but what should people do?
In practical terms, I've seen a lot of super cool things. So, for example, I've seen an entrepreneur who was combining work at home and work in the office to help people to manage the problem of the kids. No one sees Javier, who is one of the managers, online managers of the session. Javier has 3 kids in this moment in his apartment, and he's running the show. You don't know him. Okay.
Well, I know him because I talk to him almost every week. But yes.
I mean, many people who are watching us don't know him.
And I think we all have that family. I think once upon a time there was this video some years ago with a guy on BBC, and his daughter came in. Now it's kind of normal. Everybody's expecting our daughters and our dogs and our families to come in because it's kind of what we're doing these days. So Nino, let's go past the crisis. Where is this going to leave us?
Well, the point is,
and the question about Davos and the question about you think this is going to reinforce the whole story, or do you think it's going to have a snap back because the economic crisis, as Nuria Mas explained last week, is going to be severe?
That's exactly the point. So we are going to have significant new needs at global level, and people understand this. We will never be back to normal life in the next 12 as we had. This is something that will change the way we think, the way we interact. It's clear that the socioeconomic system needs to change. We discovered that in the world there are 4 companies making ventilators, only 2 in Europe. It's crystal clear that there are things that we need production capabilities in Europe, for example. So it's crystal clear, and this is the first point. So it's crystal clear that we will have new opportunities for new business, first. Second, we will need, in terms of CSR, we will need to take care of our people, because there are some people we will have to take care of psychological consequences on our employees. We will need to find better ways to combine work and family balance. We will need to understand if we really wanted to have people traveling so much or traveling in a more safe way.
We run a program for Irish CEOs, Nino, and some of the guys have said, they're never going to travel again. They used to travel back and forth between the US and Ireland all the time, and they've realized they don't have to.
Exactly. I mean, the week before the total lockdown, I was traveling like crazy. And unfortunately, there are things that we can do only traveling, but we discovered, including teaching, that there are a lot of things that can be done effectively. Now, the point here is, if we are talking about corporate social responsibility, Mike, we should take into consideration that so this crisis is not going to end in August. And we will need, as responsible managers and responsible companies, to take care of the evolution of these needs and to help people, to support people. By the way, let me tell you something, Mike, because I was speaking with an entrepreneur working in the food sector. He produces bread, all this stuff. And he was telling me that he started contacting his suppliers and clients. And at a certain point, his comment was, Nino, it was so important for them to know that I'm there, I'm willing to help them. And just a phone call was an important moment for them of psychological support. I will keep doing it every 15 days. So we need to speak with our people. We need the proximity. We need to express our willingness to support the people that are part of our daily life, and now from one day to the other we were physically disconnected.
But if I understand you, Nino, that proximity has to be authentic. We can't just pretend to care.
Exactly.
Now when we make an authentic offer to our suppliers, they might say, "Thank you so much for calling. Please pay me sooner." Or how do we deal with the second part of that conversation when, people are calling people say, "Hey, I can't pay the rent this month. My restaurant's closed." You say, "Okay." So this proximity comes sometimes at a financial cost, or no?
Of course, but of course, people understand or you can help people to understand what you can do and what you cannot do. I had a family emergency. I had to travel 30 hours to arrive where I am. People could not expect me to be there in 2 hours or half day as it was in the past.
Yeah, how did you get to Sicily? Did you take a boat or did you take a plane? Or
I had to drive for 30 hours with a special permission. So
now you're in Sicily. Italy, of course, has been terribly, terribly badly impacted. Spain has also been badly impacted. As we look around the world, there is some evidence, and one of the people are asking about this, that some companies might turn inward, might try to close their borders, try to limit this. Will the world go more towards more walls, or will the world continue its path to globalization and openness as we come out of this thing?
I think that in the short term we will be limited in the short term to national. Our perspectives will be national, but globalization is a process that will continue. And what we have to do is to make the globalization process more responsible and more sustainable. So the point is that we cannot leave everything uncontrolled. And securing does not mean increasing costs. Means rationalizing. How many things, again, we discovered that we were capable to do online and we did not do for our daily inertia. By the way, this is my first online session in my life ever. Why? Because I was a lazy, old-style professor who tried to stay away from virtual tools. So this is my confession to everyone.
And here you are broadcasting from your family's home in Palermo. I have about 3 more questions, Nino, if you don't mind. They're a little bit different. Each one talks about different things. One is on this issue of CSR. There's a bunch of very famous companies, very famous tech companies, who do tremendous efforts to pay very little tax around the world. Companies based in California, but really they pretend everything's in Ireland, and they don't pay any money for California schools, for example. I don't know, companies which look like this maybe, but
okay.
What is CSR? I mean, if you don't pay taxes to the authorities, if you don't pay for policemen, firemen, hospitals, does that mean that you're not being ethical?
To me, yes. You are not going to be. You are not.
They're legal. This is tax avoidance, not tax evasion. I mean, it's all legal.
Yes, the fact that there are a lot of things which are legal but are ethically problematic and irresponsible. And frankly, these companies are behaving irresponsibly, unethically, and I believe this is a problem. I also believe that there are some governments that, even within the European Union, that are playing with this, and this is a problem. And
now, on the other side of the story, there's a bunch of companies which have made tremendously strong commitments, both to CSR and also to sustainability, packaging, to eliminate plastics, to become carbon neutral. Do you think they're going to maintain those commitments, or do you think they're going to say, "Oh, sorry, it's been a bad couple of, this is a bad economic crisis. We're going to postpone the 2030 agenda to someday"?
I don't know in the short term. I believe that in the medium term, again, it's already said, the expectations will increase and companies will run faster toward CSR objectives. I have strong indications about this.
And you think this is true in the West as well as the rest of the world?
I believe
because Europe, the US, maybe, then Asia is very different than Africa, India, developing countries. Do you think this is a global phenomena, or this is very local to basically wealthy people?
in different ways, I see this as a global phenomenon. I believe that this crisis is going to reshape the CSR agenda in Asia. It's crystal clear. It's crystal clear that the production model in the Far East is unsustainable. I'm amazed of the tension about CSR issues in Latin America. We have a fantastic program about the compliance and CSR in Argentina. So it's a double program, IESE, IESE, and every it's 7 or 8 years. I'm going there, and I'm impressed to see how middle and top managers are concerned, how consumers have increasing ethical expectations. In the US, we have a complicated situations, but the numbers are crystal clear. So everything related to CSR, from responsible financing to green related investments, etc., have increasing numbers every year. Things are going better and better, even though let's say the political context is not favorable.
Fantastic. Nino, last comments. We got about 3 minutes left, 4 minutes left. I mean, in what way do you think this crisis has kind of shown who people really are? Does it really get at kind of blow away some of the cosmetic CSR you're talking about and force people to be honest, or what do you think?
Mike, I don't know. I spent the crisis between Spain and in Italy, and I've seen the best of people in both places. I'm reading, interacting with former participants, clients, colleagues. I'm impressed. People really reacted in an amazing way. I've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of stories of courage, bravery, solidarity, people doing the possible in the impossible to help others. So I believe that this crisis, the crisis this crisis is a drama, but as many drama is forcing us to give our best.
The last question from one of our people is, Francisco's asking, do you think that the financial community, shareholders, will reward those companies which did the right thing during the crisis and punish those which are perceived to have not done the right thing? He's thinking about BlackRock and some other big companies which have said that they're only going to invest in companies which have a commitment to sustainability and social justice.
I don't know if we can speak about punishment. For sure, I believe that naturally there will be a tendency to favor organizations that are pursuing social good objectives.
Nino Vaccaro, thank you so much for joining us today from the CaixaBank Chair of Corporate Social Responsibility and from your entire department. We really appreciate you guys making the effort to synthesize your thoughts for us. Remember, this session will be available online after the broadcast because they're going to be it's taped, so you can watch it on LinkedIn afterwards. You can also follow it on the IESE YouTube channel and on La Vanguardia. Be sure tomorrow, April 22nd at the same time, which is 4 p.m. in Europe, 10 a.m. in New York, and 10 p.m. in Shanghai. And I'm sorry for the folks in Asia. We have a Joaquim Villa. He'll be talking about how can you use systems thinking, really looking at the big picture to help find your way through the crisis. Joaquim will be speaking in Spanish, so if you're fluent in Spanish, I recommend it. And again, thank you very much for tuning in to this afternoon. You can follow this in all of our different formats. And I'll be back next week with a couple of more of our professors. Thanks and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.